Hello. Okay, so for my book club reflection, I wanted to do a video to see how it is. So I am reading Algorithms of Oppression, and this week we read chapters 3 and 4, which are actually very interesting, especially now that it's starting to become a little bit more specific and not so much research based. It's still very research based because it focuses on Google, but just the actual stories that she's telling. For instance, when she's looking up white on black crimes versus black on white crimes, the search results are really interesting how different they are. And like the author states in her book, it kind of gives us the idea that we should be concerned about who's feeding us this information. Um, so when she searches black on white crime, there isn't really any results that lead to credible sources. For instance, like articles or librarians or libraries, books, anything like that. She doesn't really get. It gets more of just biased opinion, and it's like more. I guess we could say like fed from different sources that kind of create this idea of, I guess, racism. One about somebody in my book club reflection mentioned the first time that we met is the internet the new method of keeping racists in society. And when we think about especially like this specific search, it really makes you question that, because you have to think, well, how is this, how can we really rely on a source, a search engine that we use every single day, to really be giving us the information that we need, especially when we're looking up sources for academic papers or something that we want to be well rounded on, or even when we're looking at political news. How do we know that it's not just being biased? And um, how can we even rely on these sources that are popping up when now we realize that we're not really getting the full picture of what information is out there? Um, I found this quote on page 116 and I thought it was really interesting. It says, "What we find in search engines about people and culture is important. They oversimplify complex phenomena. They obscure any struggle over understanding, and they can mask history. Search results can reframe our thinking and deny us the ability to engage deeply with essential information and knowledge we need. Knowledge that has traditionally been learned through teachers, books, history, and experience." So we're going through this search engine that we're trusting to provide us, enough information for us to be able to, especially during when we're going to vote. That's really important for our country, and as citizens, it's our responsibility. And then you want to be well informed on who's on the ballot, who are our options, what is each person doing. Um, but when we look up search results, especially right here, like it says, reframe our thinking and deny us the ability to engage deeply with essential information and knowledge we need. And you really think about that, it's like, where can you really go without getting a biased opinion? And how can you even just rely on these sources anymore? So, how can we really be well informed when this information isn't really being given to us? And I mean, people take don't really prioritize, especially things like voting, or when there is, especially as students, so busy all the time, you're just trying to get an assignment done. Sometimes you just have to go and get a whatever sources you can find, try and get this wealth of information in very limited time. And if it's not really given us this full scope of information, it's like, how can we really be well informed? And we talked, my group and I talked about that in our meeting, for especially for students, young students, since they're starting such an early age, like second grade, that they have to focus on doing research-based projects and different things. So it's like, especially with history, when it comes to history, how can they be getting this non-biased opinion? Where if they're trying to learn about racism, how can we ensure as teachers that students are coming to the right sources, or that they're getting a very well-rounded sources? We talked about also how, because of all this information that is out there and it's so easily accessible, students may not come to teachers as much anymore to help answer some of these questions, and this class especially has helped us to figure out like there's a whole another side of racism or a whole another side of history that we weren't aware of, and we have to make sure that students know this as well. So how can we really get students to be well informed about this and get them to even care about this information? There's also one of the quotes that one of my classmates picked out, and it says, "There is no federal, state, or local regulation of the psychological impact of the internet, yet big data analytics and algorithms derived from it hold so much power in over-determining decisions." And that again leads us to like Google. It's so controlled, our searches are so controlled, and we didn't even realize that it was. And there's just so much that goes into this that it's crazy. And then you think about history books and how do we know that those weren't leaving out details as well, because obviously there's a whole different thing that we weren't even aware of. There's a lot of things that I could really talk about just because this book is so well integrated into our lives, especially the internet, as it becomes more convenient, more accessible to more people. There's so much knowledge out there that is really being kept hidden. And we touched on, what if it's just to like our region? What if somebody else like across the country is searching the exact same thing? Does it depend on a location? Does it depend on the keywords? Does it depend who the person is? And that's where all these algorithms come in. So there's a lot that this book covers on just society in general, and there's so many more questions that are raised, and it really has answered for me. But I am very excited to continue reading and to find out more about other searches that the author has done, how they have played into the role, and how she goes about it, and see if she gives any suggestions, especially that maybe you could take as teachers to help integrate into our classroom.